right. Live. Position button. Hello, welcome to some Derps Talk About Games. I'm your co-host, Mango.
And I am your co-host, Buddy.
Today we're going to talk a little bit about Doctor Strange and the we didn't want to pay Paul Bettany. But before we do that, Buddy, why don't you focus on what it is we do on this podcast?
On this podcast, we talk about games, but we also talk about movies and stuff. And obviously, we're going to talk about the latest Marvel movie. One of our big projects last year was reviewing every single Marvel movie, right? We created big, huge rankings like people do for Star Wars films, except there are 28 Marvel movies. And you know, this is Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange came out this weekend. Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness stars, you know, Benedict Cumberbatch coming back as Doctor Strange. The Scarlet Witch, you know, Elizabeth Olsen also, you know, features pretty heavily in this you know, in this movie. It's directed by Sam Raimi, who famously did Spider-Man 1, 2, and 3. You know, what I would say
Also,
as the also what?
Also, like the Ash vs. the Evil Dead movies.
Yeah. I just want to say Spider-Man 1, 2, and 3, which, you know, started, in my estimation, the big comic book movie boom, right? Spider-Man 1, 2, and 3 were all the biggest movies, kind of their, you know, they set 1 million different box office records. Everybody went crazy for these. These are the kind of like the genre defining movies. I come back to Spider-Man 2 and I talk about Spider-Man 2 all the time, it feels like. So, you know, this is where we're at. Is 28th Marvel movie. It is I guess Doctor Strange 2. I don't know. What do you have? Do you have thoughts on this one? What do you want to say?
Well, let's do the pre-spoiler
Sure.
evaluation. As viewers might have suggested or might have gleaned by the fact that we've named this episode the Butiverse of Badness. I am generally unfavorable on the movie. I thought it was fun from like purely a Sam Raimi like isms perspective. I thought otherwise it was not great. But the story was not great. I thought that it has issues with kind of like its place in the MCU. I saw one critic, and by critic I mean it's Max Landis. I saw Max Landis describe it as "fuck you for caring," which I think has a little bit more legs if you watch the trailer. I hadn't watched the trailer before I watched it, so I didn't see some of the things. Like I didn't get that, or that criticism makes more sense after having seen the trailer, I think.
Can you explain a little bit more about what he means? Caring about what?
So I think there's a lot here, but like I think the most acute example of it, and I think we can go into it more on the other side. The most acute example, or I can't do it without going into spoilers. So
okay.
So yeah, we'll discuss it on the other side of things. But if you like Sam Raimi, I'd say it's worth a watch. If you're a completionist, I'd say it's worth a watch. But I think it's got a lot of issues, and I am not very positive on it. My nuclear hot take is, and this might get you mad at me, is I think this is the Last Jedi of the Marvel movies.
Whoa, really? Wow.
I
dig
think
into that, I guess.
I think specifically, just to lay it out there, it has the same kind of does its own thing and doesn't respect the rest of the universe enough problems. I think they're a little bit different, but I think it's definitely there. I think it's definitely there.
Okay, I think I maybe get that. I also think I could maybe craft an argument about the state of the fandom, right? Which we can get into this stuff when it comes to spoilers. My overall reaction here is also very negative. I think it's the worst Marvel movie I've seen in quite a long time. According to my own rankings, where I put it, it is the worst Marvel movie I have seen since Avengers Endgame. So,
yeah, that makes sense.
Pretty not great. My thing with the movie though is you know, just that, oh god, at one point it's inscrutable. Like in one sense, there's so much going on that it is just impossible to follow. It has the same sort of problem that I've described the first cut of Batman v Superman to have, or Justice League to have, right? This narrative arthritis where there's not enough, you know, kind of narrative cartilage between scenes, and huge plot points, you know, kind of whiz by like I'm in a Fast and the Furious movie, right? Like it's just like insane how fast some of this stuff plays out on screen, which left me kind of I just sort of felt like I was like tumbling through this story more than riding going along for the ride, if that makes sense. And then I think that there's also just a lot of stuff wrong on a narrative and especially thematic level. This is a remarkably empty Marvel movie because I think most of them are pretty empty. And in fact, this is particularly painful because the thing that puts famously Doctor Strange is my third favorite. It is Age of Ultron, Black Panther, Doctor Strange, right? I think that the first Doctor Strange is that good and I love it that much, right? So to really tumble off of this cliff where the movie just has basically nothing to say, nothing on its mind. It does maybe to pardon the pun, it does a little magic trick where, it kind of goes like to like pretend that character growth happened, but like it didn't. That's not how this works. So, that's mostly where I land being disappointed with this, which I actually, which is one more thing that I do want to dwell on, I guess, which is that the past round of Marvel movies have kind of all been a miss for me. Like, Black Widow and Shang-Chi were kind of fine, right? But then you get Eternals, Spider-Man No Way Home, and now Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. And I kind of feel like there are 3 bad movies in a row, which is kind of nuts.
Oh man, so that's a good point. Like, do I like this movie better or worse than Black Widow? Which was like my big cape shit moment. Like, oh
Yeah, I
man,
mean, I
that's
didn't even
tough.
like Black Widow is in my rankings, right? So I have 3. Let's call them categories. I have 3 essentially categories. One is Age of Ultron to Thor Ragnarok. These are what I would call the good Marvel movies. Then there's Black Widow to Avengers Infinity War. These are the fine Marvel movies, well enough, And then there's Spider-Man No Way Home is at the top, and the first Captain America, the first Avengers at the bottom of the bad Marvel movies category, right? So, weirdly enough, Black Widow is in my top half of Marvel movies, even though I don't think it's really that good. It's just kind of whatever.
Yeah,
Um,
I think there's like a divide here between movies that are like I'm gonna call like actively bad versus kind of like you know offensively generic,
yeah.
maybe. And I want to say that this movie goes into the actively bad category. Um, maybe I don't know. It's weird. It's weird because like I said, I like the Sam Raimi aspects of this movie, right? Like
Mhm.
I think it's generally good that like that he was given enough control that he could do some stuff that like made it feel like a Sam Raimi movie, which is I think something that the Marvel universe benefits from, right? Like I think the best example of this or best examples of these are James Gunn and Taika Waititi. Um, I think do the best job of shining through as directors in the MCU. Um, I think Sam Raimi shines through as a director here, but I don't think it meshes well with the rest of the MCU, which is part of my Last Jedi
Yeah,
take,
so
right?
the thing I want to say about that, and I do agree with this, right? Somebody tweeted out that when Doctor Strange is a Marvel movie, it's very bad, and when Doctor Strange is a Sam Raimi movie, it's very good. And I very much agree with that sentiment. Just my problem is that 80% of the movie is a Marvel movie, maybe like 20% is a Sam Raimi movie, right? And crucially, so the big difference for me between Thor Ragnarok, Guardians of the Galaxy, Black Panther, some of these are tour driven sorts of Marvel films, is that I get the sense that these are not just directors, but also kind of overarching storytellers, if that makes sense, right? Like
Yeah.
Black Panther is not just directed as a Ryan Coogler movie, it is also like written, and all of the other intervening pieces also feel like a Ryan Coogler movie, if that makes sense, right? Whereas this, I do think it is a Sam Raimi movie in its direction, as in where the shots are, what they're doing, right? But I don't think that it's written or structured or any of those other things. None of that felt like a Sam Raimi
You,
movie
you know what
to
it, you
me.
know what it feels like to me almost kind of like the inverse of Spider-Man 3, which is like the studio shoved in significant plot elements and that kind of like pulled Spider-Man 3 down. This feels like Sam Raimi got to shove in some elements, right? Like without going into spoilers, there's some moments towards the end that felt very Sam Raimi, right? Like Um, like the whole kind of like Doctor Strange in the last act in the prime piece of the multiverse, which I think is spoiler free enough. Like that thing, people at home, we'll talk about it on the other half, but that felt very Sam Raimi to me.
Yep.
Whereas most of it did not. Do you just want to put the spoiler warning here, or did you want to say something else before?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Really, my last thing on this is that it actually weirdly feels like a TV show episode to me, right? Which is to say that the real power is in the producer or the writers, whoever is sort of dictating the overarching plot structure, right? And the director is just the guy hired to be on set for the day to point the actors and give them their motivations, right? Which is weird because I've always sort of felt like the Marvel movies felt like this, but it's typically in a reversed way, which is to say that the Marvel movies are kind of all doing their own thing. They're pretty loosely, in continuity with one another and mostly focused on kind of their individual stories, right? But that the direction felt like TV direction to me. This is my big thing about the Russo brothers, right? Who obviously did the Back to Avengers movie and Captain America Civil War, is that, and honestly a lot of these other movies feel this way, is that they are lit like a television show, right? Which is to say big blanket, clear lighting. There isn't any, contrast, there aren't any shadows ever. And so we've kind of done the flip side of this, right? Where we have a true film director doing true film things in a what is essentially a gigantic television show season, right? But that is stretching years and years and years, and each episode is installment is 2 hours long. In terms of where the plot and the story is going.
So I disagree with you slightly on that, but I can't go into it without the spoiler warning. So we're gonna put the
Okay,
spoiler
yeah, we
warning
can
here.
do spoilers here.
Spoilers. If you'd like to see Doctor.
Oh, also, did I give a recommendation? My recommendation is do not see this in theaters, but if you want to watch it on Disney Plus, that's probably fine. I don't think it's worth a theater ticket, but like if you have Disney Plus and you have 2.5 hours, honestly, mercifully, it's a very short movie, so I was kind of surprised at how short it felt compared to some of the slogs that we have gotten in recent Marvel movies. But yeah, that is my recommendation for this film.
So I would generally agree. The only counterpoint I'd offer is, we've said we enjoy the Sam Raimi-ness of this movie when it happens. I think that comes across better in a theater. Like those filmic aspects are the things that are good, and that's better seen in the theater. But I think as like a general economic proposition, I would agree. Don't spend your money on a ticket. Watch it on. But here's your spoiler warning for Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. If you would like to see it spoiler free without spoilers, which is what that spoiler free means, stop here. I think we've given you enough time. Anyway, to go to your point about the producer was holding the reins, I feel like that was probably true for like the overarching points. But one of the things that stuck out at me was that this movie felt like Sam Raimi didn't know a lot of the MCU fullness. And this particularly, I think, comes out with the way Wanda is treated. It feels kind of like they sheared off the nuances that came through in WandaVision, because they portrayed her mostly sympathetically in WandaVision, and she just kind of like rotely evil very quickly into this movie, right? Like obviously she has some sympathetic things to her, but like you don't get like the sense of continuity. You just kind of get like, and now she's decided to go off the edge off screen, and that like you didn't see that happen, which feels wrong. That makes sense. And maybe that's just kind of like you can't expect everybody to have watched a television series thing, but they didn't do enough, I think, to like establish what was happening there. I feel like if I hadn't watched WandaVision, I'd be like, what the fuck is Wanda talking about with these children? Do you have a response to that or any thoughts about
Absolutely. No, I 100% agree. And this is the start of my quote unquote narrative tumble, right? Because I was so just sort of floored both by the reveal, but like also how low key and flippant it is, right? Like it's not a real villain reveal. It's not a real twist. It happens pretty early. Doctor Strange goes and has a conversation with her, and she immediately says a thing and like reveals the desolate landscape, and then he starts talking to her as if she is the villain. But I'm sitting here like, what is going on? Is she the bad guy?
Yeah.
No,
No.
like
Yeah.
this can't possibly happen. And then it goes on further, right? She's attacking the thing. They're doing some other stuff. I'm still not on board with her being the bad guy. I'm just like, this is like, sort of bullshit. The heroes fight one another, but they're gonna join together, right? I was thinking maybe they're gonna do something with Wanda's hex magic versus Doctor Strange, kind of Doctor Strange sort of like order magic, right? This is a common thing that pops up where, the Scarlet Witch is dealing with probabilities. She's dealing with entropy, right? So kind of the raw force of chaos in the universe. Whereas Doctor Strange and, the Sorcerer Supreme and the people who train in that sort of set of things, right? These are people who are dealing in what we might call order magic, right? And I was like, maybe it's something along those lines where we're gonna have to find a little yin, a little yang, a little order, a little chaos in order to really help America Chavez kind of like get this balance, right? And figure her shit out. Maybe that's where it was going. She's attacking the place. I'm like, okay, cool. I get it. Maybe this is the big fight scene. Doctor Strange and her are gonna 1v1, and then eventually he's gonna do something. Maybe he does something with the book and like frees her from this mind control or whatever. And then she starts murdering people in that battle. And I was like, what? The superhero Scarlet Witch, superhero Wanda, who is a fucking superhero, is now murdering people. Well, now she's absolutely the villain, right? Like, she's gotta be just straight up the villain from here. And like, you would think that at that point, I have fallen off the roller coaster and I'm tumbling in midair, but the roller coaster catches me. I'm on board, right? I get it. She's the villain now. Okay, rocky start, but we're sort of there. We're sort of kind of like on board. But just because I was so lost in that moment, I never could get back into, I could never really get back into the movie. I actually quite liked the opening of the movie. But from the moment that he went to go talk to Wanda and she was like, "Oh, I'm actually the bad guy," I was like completely out of it. I could not get back into this picture.
I think I feel that as well. I think that's probably like 90% of what I'm thinking about this. Part of it, like for me, I didn't realize that she was the villain until somebody mentioned that she was the one that sent the monsters. I was like in my head, I was like, oh, there's somebody sending the monsters, and then she just also happens to want to capture her for her own reasons. And then like I think either one of the Benedicts mentions that she sent the monsters, and then she also doesn't send any more monsters at all, right? Like that was like it was so very plainly a Benedict, the plot demands that we do it this way. And so we're going to do it this way instead of, or, the plot demands that we have an excuse for this happening rather than it being woven into the narrative at any point. There's like a handful of moments that I would call just kind of like sloppy storytelling. That's one of them. The one that really got me from just kind of like a raw storytelling perspective is when they they go, when they do their first pop, right? They go and literally stand on backstory buttons, right? Like Doctor Strange trips over a backstory button and it's like, I have tragic origins, and then America Chavez stands on it and it's like, I also have tragic backstory things that are easy to cut out for foreign audiences that don't like gay people, which that felt so transparent to me that also stuck out to me like a sore thumb. I just couldn't help thinking if whether or not they reshot the scenes where she was wearing the LGBTQ pin, because like that, like I had thought that like maybe I had seen it not be there in the shop, but I didn't pay close enough attention. But I don't know.
That is precisely the kind of thing that you edit out for China, right?
Yeah.
You can just cut that scene with her backstory. You don't have to deal with gay moms, right? You can just VFX out that pin. Oh, nobody has to see it or whatever, which is like, I hate it. Whatever. Oh,
Yeah.
God, honestly, it is worse to me. Like, I don't really think I have a place to preach as like a straight guy, obviously, but like it is worse to me to make a movie where it is so easy to just cut it out as necessary, right? That you just don't even have to deal. You don't even have to deal with it. Right?
Yeah, I mean,
why I hate that.
I mean, it's also like obviously an important part of her character, right? Like she's wearing the pin for a reason, and they focus on on her mom's for a reason, right? Like our personal our personal identities aside, like that's just like bad storytelling, right? Like
Yeah, this is also tough. I couldn't help but feel a little bit alienated from this just because America Chavez is a character that I'm not familiar with, right? Like I have this kind of archivist backstory in my head of so much MC like Marvel canon stuff, right? But about the time that I fell off reading weekly comics just because I couldn't afford them anymore was sort of where around where America Chavez gets introduced, right? So this is a character that I also have sort of like no familiarity with. And the Darkhold is also a little bit like this. Like the Darkhold does technically exist, but my understanding is that it's a very minor thing, but it is a much more important plot thread now than it was kind of back then. So it's the kind of thing that like I remember it as an item that exists, but like also I couldn't actually articulate anything that it was used for or how important it was, right? The important thing about the Darkhold is that it is the Necronomicon of the Marvel universe, right? It is written by their version of Cthulhu, who I think is called Cthon or something, who is like an elder god on Earth or whatever. It's this whole thing. And so that also felt really weird to me. And I ended up looking it up later, and it actually has this whole really deep continuity in the MCU because I remembered it from WandaVision, right? It is there in WandaVision. Agatha Harkness has it, and she's using it to kind of match, Wanda's power as a witch. But I actually found out that it has a really long running history going all the way through Agents of Shield and even into the Runaways TV show. So this is something that has, hit on 4 different moments in Marvel canon, right? But really the time that I'm sort of introduced to it is here, and which is maybe the first time I've ever felt kind of continuity alienation, right? Which is that alienation of not having watched everything and just being like, who's that on screen? What's that on screen?
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. Yeah, no, I didn't realize that it had a past. Like, I obviously we'd seen WandaVision, but the I wasn't even sure that like Agents of Shield was like still like real canon anymore or whatnot. Like, I think that's another problem with like kind of like the MCU as like a property is just that kind of like the canonicity of things is questionable, right? Like,
Mhm.
Daredevil, obviously the same actor is playing the TV show Daredevil as the MCU Daredevil. Not the it was Ben Affleck that played the first Daredevil, right? Yeah.
2003, 2004.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the Netflix shows I think are like technically not canon anymore, or like
Honestly, the Incredible Hulk is technically not canon, which I didn't even learn about until way later. Even though characters obviously from the Incredible Hulk cross over, Tony Stark shows up in the end credit scene. According to, you know,
and
dictates from on high, the Incredible Hulk is not a canon Marvel Cinematic Universe picture, which would make a certain amount of sense because it was distributed with Paramount. Um, so were the first 2 Iron Man movies, right? Or maybe just the first one, but yeah, who's gonna say that Iron Man 1 is not canon
yeah,
to
yeah, right.
MCU,
That's like
right?
the yell they have to hold.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean that is interesting because like they've also kind of established that like for the most part, the superheroes are the same actors across the multiverses. Like I think some of the stuff that they set up in this movie is neat, but also like things I could have like read off of a page, basically, right? Like I fully expect John Krasinski or whatever his name is to come back as like a Reed Richards from not that universe. So just because it occurs to me now, this is the point where we can pop into like fuck you for caring, right? A
Yeah.
big moment in the trailer is Patrick Stewart being Professor X, like in the trailer, right? And they kill him immediately. I think that is, I think, the core of the Max Landis, fuck you for caring thing, right? Like you were invested in all of this, and Marvel is calling you stupid for caring about it, which is I don't quite fully agree with that thesis, but I understand where he's coming from. I definitely see
Oh, I do
pieces
agree
of
with that thesis actually, but I agree with that thesis from a different perspective, which is Mordo, right? The final bit of Doctor Strange, right? The original Doctor Strange movie is Baron Mordo going, "You, Stephen Strange, are not worthy of the Sorcerer Supreme title, right? And I'm going to take it from you because." He has this line about like the debt must always come due or whatever, right? Where he has this thing about people who are using magic in irresponsible ways, right? Um, and that's the sequel hook, right? That's the sequel hook to Doctor Strange 2. When I, as a Doctor Strange fan, am signing up to see Doctor Strange 2, and I even see, maybe in a world where he doesn't show up, I'm even less pissed. But in like the trailers, I see him there. Okay, cool. Here's Baron Mordo. Here's this character that I know is supposed to show up. But no, it's not actually Baron Mordo. It's another alternate universe of Baron Mordo, and Doctor Strange just sort of waves off screen to say, oh, in my universe, Baron Mordo fucking hates me, but we don't get to see that. We don't get to interact with that at all, right? And it's like, that's the thing that bothers me, right? Like, that's where it feels like, fuck you for caring to me, buddy, right? Which is even more ironic because I'm talking about being alienated from the canon, because it's pulling on this stuff with the Darkhold from WandaVision. It's pulling on, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. lore or whatever. It's pulling on stuff from the comics that I'm not super familiar with, which is a different feeling. I've never had that before, but that's fair enough, right? But to sort of simultaneously have this feeling of, I kind of don't really, I have shaky ground on what this is standing on continuity wise, and then the continuity that I do care about to just be tossed aside, right? Actually, Baron Mordo's not that interesting. We don't give a fuck. Sure, he's one of the most powerful casters. He's one of the most powerful casters in the world, and maybe Wanda, also demonstrating that level of power as a caster is, is something. But no, that's not going to happen on screen. That's we don't care about that. We're dealing with our like multiverse bullshit. That really did bother me. That got under my skin.
Yeah, no, I mean, and I don't know, like I so the reason I'm a little bit more hesitant on that criticism, because that makes sense as well, and this John, I want to call him Jean-Luc Picard, this Patrick Stewart criticism, is that these are things that are primarily caused by the trailer, and while I get that that's obviously a piece of marketing that sets expectations, I also don't want to hold choices made in the trailer against the film too much, because I doubt Sam Raimi cut the trailer, right? Like and so I don't know how much to be mad at.
Yeah, I mean, I do want to be clear. I think the trailer makes it worse, but also, if we had gone into this movie and there was no mention of Mordo, I also would have been pissed. What's the point of sticking around for a post-credit scene if it's not going to matter? And I've always sort of felt this way, to be honest, but like, it's good enough a lot of the time, right? Where things from the post-credits kind of pay off maybe in the next movie, right? Like the one that I think about a lot is the Winter Soldier, where the post credits is, they found him, they've got his arm in that vice, right? They've got the Winter Soldier's arm in that vice. And that does pay off in Civil War, but like also not really. And so it's just like, there's a lot of that is under my skin when it comes to how these Marvel movies are structured and the way that they move forward, compared to the previous version, where it felt like there was pretty strict continuity between these different post-credit scenes, right? And the fact that at the end of Thor, Loki essentially touches down on planet Earth, right? Like that's okay. I want that. I want to see more of that kind of stuff where one movie kind of like leads into the next. So I don't know. And it makes me, and the worst part is, it makes me like not interested in the thing that I want, which is the mid-credit scene for this one is Charlize Theron shows up. Do you understand this at all? Is this one of those things I have to explain?
Yeah, explain this to me, please, buddy.
Okay, Charlize Theron is playing Clea, right? Who is the Lois Lane, right? The Mira to Doctor Strange, right? It is his, she was established very early on in the comics. At first they're enemies, but then they eventually get together. They get married at a certain point. I'm pretty sure she dies though, at a certain point. But her whole thing is that she's the daughter of, I don't think Dormammu directly. She's like the princess of the dark dimension, right? So Dormammu is in the dark dimension. She is like the princess of the dark dimension. And she has that Mara Jade kind of plot line of, I was sent to kill you. This is also Mira, right? I was sent to kill you, but also I realized that you were a pretty good guy and we fell in love. And
you were
pretty
handsome, right? And I would like to bang. Yes.
Exactly. Anyway, she has that white hair. And she's also very powerful. She's also a very powerful sorceress. They have a cool dynamic. In the same way that I like honestly, they are a kind of 1-to-1 of the dynamic that I like for between Aquaman and Mira. In the sense that Mira is aggressive and a hard ass and doesn't take any bullshit. Clea is also very similar because she was like kind of a villain or whatever, and Doctor Strange is a little bit more reserved and a little bit more thoughtful. That kind of a thing. And that to me is great. Like, this is core Doctor Strange shit that I want to see on screen as a Doctor Strange fan. Yes, give me the Dark Dimension. Yes, give me Clea, right? But I don't trust that that's going to be delivered on because, like, I also wanted that with Baron Mordo, right? And so I
Man,
don't know. That whole thing is
that
frustrating.
that actually retroactively makes it worse because that means that they very clearly, you know, wrote this whole kind of like get over Rachel McAdams plotline just to clear the way for Clea, right? Like I was like, because like the clear because it felt weird at the end that it was like, oh, is Doctor Strange gonna like go out with like alternate universe Rachel McAdams now, and is that going to be weird? And they just kind of like, it's like, well, I guess that can't work out. Bye now. And like this kind of happens, like, and that makes a lot more sense now because they have to clear the way for this other relationship, which, oh, that feels so much worse.
I mean,
Um,
I get it in a certain sense because I don't like Rachel McAdams' character. I was kind of hoping she wasn't coming back because, to be honest, like, she sort of, I don't know. To me, she fulfilled her narrative function in the first movie, right?
right.
And you can just move past her, right? It's like Spider-Man has a bunch of girlfriends that are not Mary Jane Watson and Gwen Stacy, right? Like he dates Betsy Brandt, who is just like a secretary at the Daily Bugle, right? He also goes on a couple of dates with like Liz Allen, who's like the hot popular girl at school or whatever. That's sort of where I felt like Christine lived. It's like, okay, sure, you guys are whatever, but you're not OTP material, right? You're not sticking around. You're one and done kind of thing. And while I did, I liked the beginning in the sense that it was neat having Doctor Strange kind of come back. And I always love those interactions where it's like the hero has to give something up, right? Like you see that cost that being a superhero takes on someone's personal life, right? Where he goes to her wedding, and it's clear that he wishes he could have this kind of sedate lifestyle with her, but his duties as Doctor Strange kind of like take precedence. And this is when I was fully on board with the movie, right? Because then this monster attacks and he just goes out, and I was like, great, what core superhero shit. This is like the basic business superhero shit. Doctor Strange goes to a wedding and gets sad, and then a monster attacks, and he has to go be a superhero and save the day. Perfect, right? And then it just all goes off the rails because after that, he basically is like, well, let me go consult my encyclopedia of Marvel canon for this. And we get into Wanda and just all this other stuff, and it goes off the rails.
Yeah. Also, I want to say that like I think the theming of the movie's a little bit off because it feels like the movie wants to tell you that Doctor Strange didn't have to live himself for 5 years, right? Like it's like Rachel McAdams is like, oh, you always have to be the one holding the scalpel, right? And it's like the implication there seems to want to be like, you didn't have to resolve the Infinity War the way you did, which is wrong, at least as far as all the rest of the game.
No, it's not wrong. It's supported by the text because we see that Doctor Strange did in fact resolve the Infinity War in a completely different manner in this other alternate universe, right? And it's like, I don't know. I wanted to deal with the fact that Doctor Strange did that thing where he saw 14 million outcomes, and the correct one was to give Thanos the time gem or whatever in Infinity War, right? Because that was neat. That was a really cool, interesting moment, and it makes him a cool and interesting character that he kind of like makes that choice. And I was expecting there to be more of that because it was set up in the beginning, right? The one guy is like, was that I can't help but wondering, was there any other way? And Doctor Strange says no, right? But then you also see that the Doctor Strange is going to kill America Chavez and take her power, right? Which is a very similar sort of situation. And you get all of these situations, you get all of this stuff around, oh, what is Doctor Strange willing to sacrifice for the greater good, right? Like, yes, he was willing to sacrifice people who died to Thanos, right, in order to, it, like, because he saw the future in which they figured it out in essentially in Endgame, right? But you don't bring back everybody who died. Black Widow, Doctor Strange theoretically sacrifices Black Widow, sacrifices Vision, right? Along these lines, and anybody else who doesn't get brought back from whatever it's called, the blip. But all of that is left on the wayside. We don't actually want to deal with that stuff. This is part of what I mean about the thematic magic trick going on. There really is no theme here. There's no cohesive kind of deeper thought. It is just it is gesturing to the thought and hoping to God that you go, oh, that was so profound. It's like, no, it wasn't. It wasn't profound at all.
See, this is also why I think this is partially like Sam Raimi has not watched the rest of the MCU stuff, right? Because like I feel like somebody who has like watched all this would be like, that's the wrong move to make here, right? Like you pick up some other thing that he did, right, and you make it about that instead of like this, really important choice that he made, right? And like it's funny that you said that it felt like the producers had the reins. It felt like the producers didn't have enough of the reins to stop something like that from happening, to stop from basically doing Wanda dirty, right? Like that kind of thing. And that's why.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I actually expected to happen, because he's probably the biggest Doctor Strange villain outside of Dormammu, outside of Baron Mordo, right? Is I thought that the stuff with dreams was going to come back through the villain Nightmare, right? Who is a Doctor Strange villain that sort of, it's kind of like Freddy Krueger in a way. He traps you in an eternal nightmare, and you have to outsmart him in order to escape it and essentially wake up, right? And I thought that that's where we were going with this. That Wanda was being essentially possessed by Nightmare in order to do all this other stuff, because there's this implication of dreaming is connections to the different parts of the multiverse. You do something with that, right? Like they obviously talk about dream walking all the fucking time. Nope, Nightmare is not in it. He doesn't factor into it at all. There is nothing.
Yeah. Like you think that maybe Crazy Strange was supposed to be like that?
Yeah, well, because I would have expected that, because Nightmare doesn't have a form. Like he doesn't have you can't look him up and you see a bald guy like you do with Lex Luthor. Nightmare appears to you in the guise of other people. So it would be normal for Nightmare to be Doctor Strange but evil, right? And he's telling Doctor Strange, "Ho ho, I've got you trapped, Doctor Strange, you piece of shit. I fucking hate you," right? Or to take on the guise of Wanda, the Scarlet Witch, and make Doctor Strange think that the Scarlet Witch is freaking out when actually she's not involved in this at all, right? Like this whole thing is kind of like a ruse or whatever. Obviously none of that happened, but what are you gonna fucking do?
Yeah. So I've got like kind of like a more general point that's not necessarily particular to this movie, but something that I thought of while watching this movie is Doctor Strange as a character has a problem that I want to liken to. So I've watched all of Deep Space Nine, Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and something I've said before, I think on this podcast, is that I really like the character of Odo, who's the chief of security on the space station, but I only like him when he's involved in the B plots and he's just kind of being stern and angry and stop with your nonsense, Quark, or whatever. When the plot focuses on him, he gets all kind of and he's very much kind of like a stoic character. The plot focuses on him. It's about his kind of weird emotional problems, with spoilers for Deep Space Nine that I don't want to go into. But essentially, he feels like he's a much different character when he's the source of attention, rather than being kind of a side character that has I guess a little bit flatter as a side character. I think Doctor Strange suffers from some of this, where I think Doctor Strange wants to be a little bit more reserved and a little bit more stoic, and maybe a smartass, but not like a goofball. And I feel like when you put the spotlight on him, especially in kind of the current Marvel paradigm, right, he has to be a little bit more silly. I felt the what's the term you love to use? The begins with a B.
Athos.
Yeah, I felt the bathos problem in this movie pretty hard. I also felt that kind of the emotional entanglement stuff, I just kind of didn't buy, right? I get that he had this will they won't they relationship with Rachel McAdams' character for a very long time, but like I think I just kind of didn't buy it, right? Like the inspirational speech he gives at the end as like zombie Doctor Strange, like I was like, what the fuck is this, right? Like this
No,
didn't.
yeah, that is the other thing that I think is the big narrative failing. He doesn't do anything. He just tells her believe, and she does it. Right? There is no catharsis there. There's no underpinning character growth. She did not learn anything new, and the logic that he uses is dog shit logic that doesn't make sense. He basically just goes, "You've been controlling it the whole time," and she goes, "What about my two moms that I trapped somewhere in the multiverse and I have no idea where they are?" And he goes, "They brought you to this moment." And I'm sitting there like, this moment is the most traumatic, horrendous thing. She is on the precipice of doom, essentially, right? Having her power ripped from her by the most powerful being in the fucking cosmos. And you want to tell me that, like, she's actually been willing herself to this moment the whole time? None of this makes sense. It doesn't make sense. Stop trying to make it make sense. There's no theme here, right? Like, it doesn't matter. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a deeper problem here, which is that the Marvel Cinematic Universe use of Doctor Strange is different to, like, kind of fundamentally different to his character in the comics, and I don't know how to reconcile that, right? The one thing I complained about in the not Far From Home, No Way Home, in the No Way Home review was how Doctor Strange just kind of flippantly goes along with this whole plan to rewrite the universe. And the thing that's weird about that is it is kind of in character with him, right? Because, Doctor Strange is a guy with an ego. And he thinks he can do everything, right? He's kind of a control freak. He thinks of himself as the most powerful guy in the universe. This is why I loved his first movie so much, right? It had a very unique and interesting theme, which was his whole thing was not about, like the typical hero stuff is about like selfishness, selflessness, or whatever. Doctor Strange, that was never a part of the equation. It was about his ego. He needed to learn to lose in order to win, right? The way that he defeats Dormammu is by dying over and over and over again, and only through the power of infinite failure can he actually do the thing that he wants to do, which is win, right? And he is that guy who is obsessed with, like, he is that guy that is obsessed with winning, which is kind of close. That is definitely in like comics version of Doctor Strange, right? So that's kind of like step one on our derivation. Step two on our derivation is when we start getting into like Infinity War and No Way Home and Thor Ragnarok, where Doctor Strange is showing up as like this alternate, this like secondary character, right? And Infinity War is pretty good about showing that Doctor Strange is a guy who, he's very lawful in a D&D sense, right? Like he believes in the rules and he wants to contain the cosmos, essentially the rules of the cosmos going, because if that fails, right, everything falls to entropy. That's bad, right? So he is a guy who very typically in the comics kind of shows up as the dude who will say, no, we can't do this because it will upset like the foundations of the universe, right? I can't use this spell to teleport you back in time. I can't undo, the death of this person. I can't whatever else, right? When somebody goes to him and it's like, I want you to do some magic to fix the problem. Basically, he's there to say no, it would fuck with the underlying rules of the universe, and it's my job as Sorcerer Supreme to hold those rules in sacrosanct. Well, when we get into Infinity War and eventually like No Way Home, he's kind of become this guy who is pretty willing to break those rules in order to win, which follows to a certain extent. It follows from the arc, but we have now gotten to this point where the MCU Doctor Strange and the comics Doctor Strange are just in like very, very kind of like different places. And in this movie, it really sort of hits its peak because this movie seems to suggest that Doctor Strange will become a villain in most realities given the opportunity to, right? Whereas and I know the thing that they're drawing on here, right? They are drawing on a very specific piece of Doctor Strange lore where he basically goes into the vault of the Sanctum Sanctorum and he breaks out a demon and sucks the demon's powers into himself because the Hulk has returned to the planet Earth and is absolutely devastating everything, right? And so Doctor Strange needs to use this black magic in order to defeat the Hulk, which was an amazing moment, and it's a really foundational piece of his lore because for so much of Doctor Strange's history, he has resisted that temptation, right? So to see the guy actually give in was like huge. It was a big deal, right? But the problem is, in the comics, that happens once. And Doctor Strange suffers incredible consequences for that, right? This is the reason why he loses the Eye of Agamotto and is not the Sorcerer Supreme anymore, right? Because he, sort of fails in his charge to keep this stuff contained by, in fact, ingesting, whatever this potion was. It had to do with Ghost Rider. It was not really a potion, but you get what I'm saying. But now it is sort of the foundation of his character in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, where he is constantly willing to break the rules and always breaking the rules in order to get, the job done, which follows through in the Doctor Strange movie in this place of like, now what am I latching onto? What am I sort of like following along from here, right? And my hope was that the movie was going to land on the cinematic point of actually Doctor Strange needs to take responsibility for the amount of times that he has broken the rules to get the job done, right? That he sort of used these utilitarian ethics in order to accomplish his goal. So now Doctor Strange is going to defeat Wanda by showing great restraint. And even though he is locked in an alternate universe with only the Darkhold to get out, he is going to refuse the temptation to use the Darkhold's power. He is not going to break the rule, and he is going to outthink that problem, right? And through this abstinence, essentially, he is going to figure out the way to get the thing, right? Like maybe in holding the Darkhold, and Christine tells him, "Oh, you need to use the Darkhold to go back to, the Prime universe and do whatever." And he goes, "No." And then the Darkhold turns into the Book of Ashanti or something, because they're antithetical for one another, right? And him having resisted its greatest corruption makes him worthy of the Book of Ashanti, something kind of along those lines. Nope, he gives in. He fucking uses the Darkhold. He uses the Darkhold and he corrupts himself with it. And that's the point of the movie. He corrupts himself again, which is the same thing that he's done in every other fucking movie. There is no arc. There are no themes. This doesn't matter, right? It's just like, calm the fuck on. And it's like, I can respect a world in which Doctor Strange does not behave according to the rules of the comic book universe. That is okay. I am willing to go with this version of I win at all costs, Doctor Strange. Even if things are bleak, I'm willing to make the tough choices and the tough sacrifices for victory, like giving Thanos the time right, or the time stone. Fucking fair enough. Fair enough. But if I'm going to give them that credit of the Doctor Strange of the cinematic universe is a fundamentally different character than the comics, at least pretend to do something interesting or unique or real with that stuff, because you aren't and you do not. And that's why it sucks. And that's why it's bad and I hate it.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, to your point though, right? Like, it's like he uses the Darkhold to do this. Like, I think like zombie Doctor Strange was a cool moment, right? Like a cool cinematic moment, right? But as we've been over before, he doesn't use it really to defeat Wanda. He uses it to give a dumb inspirational speech to fucking America Chavez.
That isn't even
right?
inspirational, right? Like, yeah, that has absolutely no substance and says nothing. It doesn't make any logical sense. Oh god.
Yeah.
I mean,
and the cost of his corruption is he gets a cool third eye or something that apparently is like,
oh god, that was also the worst part. I was actually also hoping that he was going to explain some loophole at the very end, right? Christina's gonna be like, "Wait, aren't you corrupted by the Darkhold?" And he goes, "No, even though I was using dream walking, because I dream walked into a corpse, or whatever, I and not into an alternate universe self, or because I dreamt walked to my base universe, right? The universe that I am native to, the Darkhold couldn't, fuck with me or whatever. So I'm fine. I'm fine. It worked out. I outsmarted the thing, because that would Doctor Strange, right? To sort of use that sort of loophole. This kind of thing happens all the time in Doctor Strange comics, right? Where some magic law is created and he finds some clever loophole to that, to that law to beat the thing, right? This is like the thing that underpins all of his stuff with Nightmare, by the way, which is using these like clever loophole sort of like rules lawyering, essentially, things to defeat the bad guy. Nope, none of that happens. Not at all. It's just completely unrelated. This may be the first Marvel movie that I think fails to understand its character at its core.
maybe, we'll get lucky, and if that's what the setup for the third movie is, right? Like, because because like that would make, because like he hasn't really like felt any repercussions for like defying Wong, right? Like they also play it like he's grown, right? Like he bows to Wong, right? Like as Sorcerer Supreme, right?
Yeah, I
Like,
also wanted that to be a thing. I was actually kind of hoping for this at the beginning because I thought it was neat. You know, Wong as Sorcerer Supreme is an interesting kind of dynamic. And something that I was expecting to see was almost sort of like a buddy cop nature, right? Where, you know, he is used to being the guy in charge, but now he finds out that, you know, whatever, Wong got promoted and he's now subordinate to Wong, and he fucking hates it. That's a pretty okay recipe for a Marvel movie. You could get me on board for that or whatever. But nope, Wong and him stay split up for almost the entire movie. Yep, yeah, don't interact really all that much.
I don't know if you've seen, but somebody photoshopped like it was like, oh my god, I can't believe they did it. And it's like a fake like end credit sting, and it's Morbius and Wong. And I have never so desperately wanted something so obviously fake.
Hey, Morbius is out there in the multiverse. Okay,
yeah,
he could show up in the next Marvel movie.
he could show up in the next Marvel movie as himself, or like as like the movie one, or as like this universe's Morbius.
I hate it here. I constantly am using. I use Morbius now all the time in like common parlance. Like so this is unrelated, but you know, Blizzard announced some changes to item stuff that's going on in season 4, right? Where all of the raids are going to be at parity at the end of Shadowlands. You can get gear from any of them, and they're basically giving you, once you kill a certain number of bosses, you get a free token, and you can turn that token in for the piece of your choice, right? So if you are going after some piece of chase gear, right, like Jathis or a trinket or something along those lines, you kind of have this. And I was reading the WoW forum threads, and the forum threads were absolutely apeshit, right? Like people just kind of failed reading comprehension on a basic level. They were like, oh no, I need to grind out 30 bosses in order to get gear. This is such bullshit. It's like, no, you're still getting gear from the bosses. This is on top of that. This is bad luck protection, right? This is nothing else. And somebody made a joke that was just like, Blizzard, kill 30 bosses and get an extra piece of gear while still getting all the gear along the way. Players, I can't believe you're forcing me to engage with systems or whatever. And people started riffing on this, right? Riffing on this joke, where it's like, I can't believe you're just something completely unrelated. My thing was, I can't believe you're making me sit down and watch Morbius, the living vampire, the next Marvel legend. You know what's crazy? I think I might have had a better time watching Morbius than this movie.
Oh man, that's true.
I think like, Morbius might be better.
So I will not say that I think that Morbius is better. I will say that maybe I had a better time watching Morbius because it was like so obviously trash that I had fun from that perspective. I definitely had fun watching like you know, as dumb as this movie was, I thought Zombie Strange with like the ghost cloak, that made absolutely no fucking sense. Like what the fuck?
Oh, yeah.
Like whatever. Like it makes no sense and there's no consequences for it. I like the more I talk about this, the more I think I'm right that like this next movie is clearly going to be like, you're a fucking idiot. You know, like we're, you know, like I'm gonna like eat your soul now, and like Wong has to save her. Like that's got to be what it is, right? Like maybe I don't fucking know. I don't know.
I do, yeah. I guess you're right, and I do like other pieces of the movie. A lot of the action scenes were neat, though. The one that everybody is going crazy for that I thought was dumb as fuck was the music one. Like the music action scene, everyone was like, "Oh, this is so cool. This is so whatever." And I'm just like, "This is that was a boring." That was basically like a bad Dragon Ball Z fight where Goku Kamehamehas, and then the other person takes the Kamehameha and shoots it back at Goku. That's it. And then all it does was like played with musical beat, you know, like musical.
Yeah. So I thought it was like a cool aesthetic, but they don't like do the work for it, right?
Yeah.
Like if like, you know, if this Doctor Strange was like a concert pianist instead of being a surgeon, right? And you know, that's why he uses the music, that could have been cool, right?
Or like, if Doctor Strange is trying to teach America Chavez how to control her multiverse powers, and she's like, how does magic work? And he goes, you know, it's a lot like music. And he explains through some metaphor that magic is like music. Maybe I would get it. But this is just like, I don't know. That was
Yeah, I
dumb.
mean, but it didn't even like even on its own terms, right? Like there is no like legible reason why plucking the harp string should create a note that like wins the battle, right? Like that's just a thing that happens because it looked neat, right?
Yep.
Like if but like if there had been like a reason there, right? Like I was thinking about this earlier when you said like, like this is like, this is missing some of that connective tissue. Like, is there a Raimi cut? Is there kind of like release the Raimi cut and Kevin Feige enough until like this movie
Yeah,
makes sense?
honestly, the thing with the harp also doesn't make any sense because the original thing that he pulls the music from is the sheet music, right? He pulls the
Yeah.
notes off the pages, but the piano is right there, and the thing that starts it is he hits the piano and makes like a cacophony sound, hitting all the notes at once, right? And he falls on the floor and he goes, "Ho ho!" And then he summons the notes off of the paper and shoots them back at the other Doctor Strange, who just conjures his own his own notes. And I was also thinking this was still when I was a little bit thinking about order versus chaos, right? I was thinking, does this have something to do with the fact that because the first Doctor shoots the orange notes, which are just all jumbled up, right? He pulls them off of the bars, right? The measures that they are a part of, and he shoots them. Then the second Doctor Strange conjures a purple bar of measures, and I was like, is he going to use the chaos of the music in order to defeat the order magic of the other Doctor Strange? And like maybe there's something there. Nope, definitely not. This movie is a lot of those sorts of things for me, where I'm just like, are they going to do something interesting or deep? Nope, not at all. This is just cool. That's all. That's it. We're
Yeah,
moving on.
I think this as like kind of like a thing is the danger of magic as a plot device, especially
Mm.
in the Marvel sense, right? Like there is no reason for this fight to be notes. It could be fucking like like Kamehameha means. There's no reason not to. We don't have any established rules for how magic works in this universe. At least not in any way that like they pull from, right?
Yeah.
Like some like for all like we spent like an episode like the back half of an episode a couple of weeks ago trashing on Harry Potter. Magic has like defined spells, and the things you can do are the things that the spells say you can do, and like some of the plot points there are clever application of things, and there are very big problems with the way Harry Potter does all of that too.
Yeah,
But at
right. Like,
least
why would
there's
anybody use any spell except for Avada Kedavra in a firefight, right?
right.
Or Expelliarmus, right? Which obviously also just disarms your opponent instantaneously. So it's like you're watching this wizard duel between Voldemort and Dumbledore, where, like Voldemort is summoning all of the water and turns it into a giant rainstorm, and he hurls the rainstorm, and then Dumbledore animates a bunch of stone statues, and those statues run at Voldemort, and they blow up, like all this other stuff. Why would you do that when you can just cast Avada Kedavra?
Yes, and
Yeah.
that like the point I'm making here is that at least for all the badness that is there, it has rules that like make some sort of sense if you at least squint at it, right? Like, you have to do a spell that exists. You can't just kind of like make stuff up. Why does Doctor Strange and other Doctor Strange use the notes? There's no reason. They could do anything else. They could like fucking like, I don't know, like for all we know, animate like just magical darts, like shoot magic missiles at each other, right? There's no legibility as to why any of the things that are happening and that are happening the way they are, other than it looks cool, which is
Yep.
not great. Um, yeah,
Agree. The last thing I want to talk about a little bit is this multiverse stuff, which I actually thought kind of on its own was pretty fine. Probably one of my favorite moments in the movie was the telling of the original of that universe's Doctor Strange, of them having killed him because he had to use the Darkhold in order to defeat Thanos, right? Like that was the way that universe defeated Thanos. And the Illuminati all get together and decide to execute Doctor Strange, and Black Bolt does it by whispering "I'm sorry," right? Because like they're friends. That was actually a legitimately affecting moment, and I liked it quite a lot, especially because the Illuminati is a really interesting kind of Marvel plot device that I have always liked and would love to see more of, right? Though the Illuminati in the comics is structured a little bit differently. Like the Illuminati in the comics is it is Reed Richards, Black Bolt, and it's Reed Richards, Black Bolt, and Professor X, right? Those three are the same. Doctor Strange is on it, but then there's also uh, Iron Man, who's also on the Illuminati, and uh, God, who's the sixth member of the Illuminati that I'm not thinking of? Well, whatever. There's a sixth member of the Illuminati who I'm not thinking of. And hold on, I'm just looking up. This is
Yeah,
gonna kill me.
so just kind of like, because I mentioned at the top of the episode, because this reminded me of it. Like, it felt like a real missed opportunity to have like fucking Tony Stark show up in the multiverse and have Doctor Strange be like, "Oh shit, I'm so sorry, Tony." Right? Like, and on the other part of this too is like, where the fuck is Paul Bettany? Like, alternate universe Scarlet Witch. Who does she have these kids with? Like, it's like he's like so conspicuously absent, right? Like, it's just, I don't know.
Especially because, and the worst part is, especially because uh
The Enforcer bots
the Vision
are
is still there, right? He ends WandaVision with that fake version of the Vision coming, and then the other version of the Vision like talks him into being that version. So theoretically, there is a Vision that is canon in the Marvel Cinematic Universe right now. But it's like, did Paul Bettany just not want to return? By the way, the sixth member that I am forgetting of the Illuminati is Namor, Prince Namor.
Submariner.
Who's the king of Atlantis. So you know, yeah, the Illuminati are interesting. They do cool stuff. Their numbers also change over the years, right? There's a part where Captain America joins the Illuminati because the Illuminati does bad shit that is bad that they eventually reap the consequences for, right? Like the Illuminati choose to send a Hulk to another planet, right? They trick him into getting onto a rocket that is going to send him to another planet after he kills a bunch of people or whatever, and then he comes back, that kind of thing. They also mind wipe people. I'm pretty sure they mind wipe Captain America at a certain point. Emma Frost joins the Illuminati at a certain point. A couple of other characters do, like Hank Pym, who has also never really like, done. He's obviously a supporting character in the Ant-Man stories, but like he's not as integral as his Marvel counterpart is or whatever. So I like the idea that he's coming back, right? Or I'm sorry, that this team is coming back, and that could be a thing going forward, right? Like we can see our own version of the Illuminati going forward. I also just generally liked the idea of Wanda ripping through, these other Avengers and killing all these guys. Especially just because it is nice to see a Marvel movie that is not pulling like we've complained a lot about Marvel pulling its punches. This is not a movie where that happens. People are dying all over the place, right? And sure, they are fake multiverse people who don't actually kind of like matter to like the story, but it was very satisfying just to like watch Wanda like, blow a guy up or whatever, or like kill Patrick Stewart in his doofy chair. And also, side note, I understand that the big yellow floating chair is the look that he had in the cartoon, and that's what they're going off of. But it looks so dumb in real life. It looks so dumb.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Wanda fight suffers from the same thing I was talking about with the musical note fight, which is like, she like sews Black Bolt's mouth shut, and she basically like, and she like fucking unwinds Reed Richards, um, but then she like actually fights Captain Carter and Marvel, um, Captain Marvel. Like, why? Like that? Like, but like when you think about it for like a second, it's like, what? Why is this happening? Why is fucking Captain Carter, which um, like Marvel, like maybe I buy that, like she's special enough that she can't just do it, but Captain Carter is literally just like a person with a jetpack and a shield, right? And like the super serum, right? Like there's no reason why Captain, like she shouldn't be able to like do things. This is also, I think, it's just like a very disappointing thing is that like they sell Scarlet Witch as someone who could just kind of like manipulate reality at will, and then she mostly doesn't, right? Like she mostly like fires beams out of her hands,
Yep.
which is like, what the fuck, right? Like it's it's not good. No, why is she like physically chasing Doctor Strange and America Chavez and Christina through like the tunnels instead of like doing magic to do it? Like, it's because they need a chase scene and they can't, she can't just win. But like,
Yep.
give me something, right? Like, you know, throw like one of those armbands on her somehow, right? Like in that like suppresses her power enough that she can't just kind of like fuck with people. Or like, make it that like, this universe's Scarlet Witch is not very Scarlet Witchy and like doesn't quite she, have her like shake her hands like when she possesses and be like, oh, I can't do things as easily in this body because this body isn't as trained for it or something. Just give me something, right? Like to make like any of this make sense. Then it doesn't, and it sucks. But
Yeah, so I guess big disappointment.
yeah, yeah. I don't know. I would be interested in seeing another Sam Raimi Doctor Strange, just because like I enjoyed what if that was there here. Um, but who knows? We'll see. I'm sure there's another one coming, right? Like there has to be.
Yeah,
Um, whatever.
whatever.
You have anything
How
else
was
you
your
want?
week? Tell
Yeah,
tell me
yeah,
all about that. I'm very like drained after this
yeah.
Doctor Strange review for some reason.
What did I do this week? I played some more Elden Ring. I played some more Magic: The Gathering Arena, which was fun. Did I do anything else of particular note this week? Uh, so this is a weird one, but um, so in the spirit of multiverses, I'm gonna multiverse hop to the multiverse where this is some derps talk about food, and talk about an experience I had this weekend. So there's this restaurant like physically proximate to me. It's called Warren's Lobster House. It is weird because like it's like whole thing is like get some lobster, but it also has this like giant salad bar, right? And it's like kind of like kitschy food. It's not like super high quality, like or I mean it's decent lobster, but it's like not super like super highbrow food or whatever, right? And it got sent me down this path about like how like kind of like did you ever go to like a Sizzler or a Ponderosa when you were a kid?
Hmm?
I think most of them are dead now. I could be wrong about that, but that whole thing was like you bought a steak and then like you got the salad bar as like one of the attractions, right? There's like these like giant salad bar where you get like salad and like things that are like vaguely salad but not quite salad, right? Like there's like some meat on it or whatever. Um, and the thing that occurred to me was that this place can survive because the lobster's still good regardless of how like mediocre it is because it's still like decent lobster and I'm underselling it. They make it they make a decent lobster dish, but whereas like the Ponderosa or the Sizzler, like it was a shitty steak that they gave you. And now that like
Mm.
people have like better food literacy about like how good you can make a steak, I think that like that model falls over a lot more. I'm actually curious. I wonder if there's like any Sizzlers or Ponderosas in the Midwest.
Sizzler is an LA thing. I'd never seen a Sizzler until I moved to LA.
Really, there were ones in New Jersey.
Wow, really?
Yeah, there was.
Fair
So
enough.
you are you familiar with the Rockaway Mall?
Mhm.
There was one in the Rockaway Mall when we were kids. It's not there anymore. Um, but
Huh.
yeah,
Yeah, interesting.
but
Yeah, we went to the Rockaway Mall a couple of times, but huh.
yeah, happiness, unlimited freedom by the plateful. Yeah, this is like it's the same type of thing. Um, apparently there's like three Ponderosas left. It looks like in Ohio and like Indiana. Uh, yeah, man. Oh, Sizzler does still exist. Have you been to a Sizzler recently? I'm curious.
No, I have never been to a Sizzler actually.
I would not recommend it, especially since your partner is a vegetarian, right? I don't think that would be.
Yeah, that's
worth-
true.
Yeah, it looks like there's none west of like the west or the easternmost one is in New Mexico, except for apparently there are 11 in Puerto Rico. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Uh, yeah.
I definitely feel you though on food literacy getting better. I had this thought about burgers recently, right? Where I went to a place and I got a burger and it just really struck me at how the quality of burgers it feels like has increased at sort of mid to high, to high end sort of like burger chains, right? Something like a Eureka Burger is a good example of this, right? But even like some of the middle fast casual stuff is also here,
Like a Five
right? Where
Guys, right?
yeah, exactly, right? I can think of a bunch of these. Five Guys, Fat Burger, right? The Habit. All of those have much higher quality burgers than I remember thinking about as a kid. And when I had a burger as a kid, I was like, it was just McDonald's. You know, like really the only burger places were like McDonald's, or you can get it at a diner, and the diner burger is probably not great. It's probably just whatever.
Yeah,
Um,
mediocre.
yeah,
Yeah. No, that's yeah. Um, it's interesting too because like there's a whole stuff about burger culture. Like if those of you at home are curious, the same network that does the fucking hot sauce interview show
hot ones.
hot ones. The same network does Burger Scholar sessions where this guy George Motes basically goes over like various regional variations on the hamburger. He's written a couple books too. I own one of them. About kind of like 50 great, like or 100 great places to get burgers in the United States or something like that. Wow. It's all like local joints with like local, and he goes over all the history. And it's like it's super interesting because like that's like that whole thing is like a thing where you can chart kind of like progression in in the United States of kind of like it's like a fairly universal thing that instantly kind of like got its regional variations. And it also like what it says about the area, right? Like the Wisconsin burger has like a pat of butter on it, but it's like it's just like all dairy all the time for fucking ever, right? Like throw as much dairy as you can at it. Whereas like there's various chili burgers. I know there's like one of the earliest burgers are in like Connecticut. There's a couple different places where like like, oh, and they still make it the way they did 40 years ago in this like weird sideways toaster oven that like they have to like have specially maintained because no one does it like this anymore. That kind of stuff. So that's all super fascinating. But
that is actually super interesting because I think about that kind of thing all the time. Like I obviously think about it in a different sense. For instance, today in our like work chat, we were talking about there's a popular thing people say. The reason New York bagels and pizza are better is because the water is different, right? That is bullshit. I just don't think that's true because I could there are bagel places in LA that I could go to and I would have what I would say is an authentic New York bagel, right? Like if I were to show you this bagel and another bagel from, like my favorite spot in Manhattan, they're interchangeable essentially, right? I just think that people have different expectations for bagels in different parts of the country, right? Not everybody wants a bagel in the exact same way, right? Because, like
I think this is more true for pizza than it is for bagels, but I think I agree
yeah, it's definitely true for pizza. Like I know people, oh man, I had a whole conversation with a friend of mine who is not from either New York or LA, right? But it's from a completely different part of the country, who I was lamenting puffy pizza, right? One of the core things I think is bad about bad pizza is when it's puffy, right? You have a big, thick, puffy crust, you have big, puffy cheese, right? And he was like, "I'm really sorry. I bet that those peas are really going to go hard on the recording." And he was talking about how like what's the alternative? I was like thin crust, right? Like I want pizza to be thin and I want to fold it. And he was like, "I hate that. I think that's gross." And I was just like, "Oh God, I can't believe you're doing this to me." But it's also true because like when I was working at Square Enix, when I ordered pizza, nobody liked it. But when other people ordered pizza, they got it from a different spot, and it was a very puffy pizza spot, and everybody in the room loved it. And I just like, oh, it's a small thing, really small, but it really got on my nerves.
It's not a small thing. If you check out our alternate universe podcast, you will know.
That's true. Yeah, like, in the alternate universe, some terms talk about food podcast. We do go into the details. We go into the details of it.
No, but like to that point, I think some of it's expectation. I also think some of it's like it's kind of like economies of scale, right? Like the biggest difference with bagels is that I think that most bagels that like you or I would be like, there's something wrong with this. I think they just don't boil them. And that requires like having a giant vat of water with like lye in it literally to boil it. And most like like fucking Einstein just like bakes their like dough circles, right?
Yeah. And that's even the weird part. I go to bat for Einstein's, but like I go to bat for Einstein's in a different way, right? Like if you get an Einstein's bagel and you just put a bunch of cream cheese on it, it's fine. But like that is it's kind of the tomato casserole thing, right? It's a different experience in a lot of ways, right? Um,
Yeah, no,
so
and
yeah,
I think I have better tolerance than you of like regional variations of pizza, right? Like
yeah,
I don't like the kind of like mass market like Papa John's type pizzas. I think they're all kind of like but a like a regional style like pan pizza, I think I can get behind. Like because I've made those too, right? Like it's instead of like the cast iron deep dish, like a cast iron kind of like very puffy crust with a bunch of cheese on it, right? Like
yep.
that's a delight in a different way than I would be getting from a New York style pizza. But you know, yeah. But what have you been up to? What's your week been? Hopefully more games
Big
related
thing that I've been doing
than
this
me.
week is Overwatch.
Ooh,
Actually, is I've been playing Overwatch. To be clear, not the Overwatch 2 beta, though I do have Overwatch 2 beta access, and I am excited to like get in the game and start actually playing. But what ended up happening was, they were doing Twitch drops for Overwatch, and so if you just watched a streamer play a bunch of Overwatch, you would use like 4 hours of Overwatch or something. You would get an Overwatch 2 beta key, and a bazillion people did it, right? Like it was maybe one of the highest days I think I've ever seen of any game on Twitch. It was like 1.5 million people watching Overwatch on Twitch or whatever. But some friends of mine didn't do that process, and we were like, well, we're gonna play together, but not everybody has Overwatch 2 access, so we just started playing Overwatch 1. And I was really surprised at how good a time I had, to be honest. I kind of expected it to go a little bit like League of Legends, because the thing that I really want out of Overwatch 2, the thing that I'm really excited about for Overwatch 2 is the PvE missions, right? Because like, PvE shooters are something that I have a lot of fun in. We talked about Killing Floor, we've talked about Payday a million times. Overwatch 2, but like obviously Overwatch 1 doesn't have that at the moment, right? It is all just the multiplayer. But I was just assuming, like me and five guys, we're all just gonna like fuck around, and sort of do our best and see what happens. And I was really surprised how much fun I had. Which is maybe a result of the matchmaking. Something that has happened to me in previous games that are like this is I play a lot of it, and then I come back and I am faced against very difficult, tough opponents who are much better than me and kick my ass hard, right? This happened in League of Legends. This happens in Hearthstone. Anytime I take a break from Hearthstone, I come back to Hearthstone. I like immediately have to trudge through, right, and just like lose a million games because my MMR is super high from when I was last playing and I was really good and all this other sort of stuff. With Overwatch, we were pretty much going, 1-1 over the course of the whole night, which does make sense because my understanding is that Overwatch does have a very complicated matchmaking algorithm, right? Like its matchmaking is some of the most advanced in games. This is, by the way, famously, I reference this quote all the time where Jeff Kaplan says, players don't want a 50-50 win rate, right? They want to win tough games, right? The genesis of that quote comes from an article that was talking about the very complex nature of the Overwatch matchmaking system. But I guess it's just accommodated for the fact that I had not played the game in 4 years very well. And the game itself feels incredibly different because when we were playing Overwatch originally, there were no role assignments. Now there's 2-2-2. It's 2 damage, 2 support, 2 tanks. I think before we used to do like 1 tank, maybe 1 support, and 4 damage, right? Maybe 5 damage. Everybody wanted to play the damage heroes. There were also offense and defense heroes, right? So like Bastion and Torbjorn were defense heroes, but McCree and whatever were like offense heroes. All that stuff is gone. And a bunch of characters have had, like minor level reworks to make them better. Symmetra is probably the best example of this. But the main thing that I felt coming back to Overwatch is that the number of characters having gone up over the past 5 years, or whatever the number is, maybe 6 years, has made the game much, much, much better. Because where originally, if you wanted a tank, you had one of 4 choices. It was Winston, Diva, Reinhardt, and Zarya, right? Those were your only choices. Now you actually have, oh, and I guess also Roadhog, so 5 choices, right? Now you actually have more ability to kind of create specialized compositions and synergies with other members of your team because the additional, like the additional people fill out those niches and roles a little bit better, right? So for the thing that I learned about was what we call a dive comp, which is using wrecking ball, the hamster in a ball that rolls around or whatever, and using Winston to just like really get in the opponent's face, right? And you also use Doomfist in that. Somebody was playing Tracer, I was playing Brigitte, and somebody was playing somebody else who I don't remember, right? And it's just like half of those characters are characters that didn't exist, right? If you wanted to do a dive comp in Overwatch on launch, you basically just, I guess you just ran Winston and that was it. You didn't really have any other sort of, like options.
Baby Diva.
Yeah, maybe go like Winston Diva, but like who do you bring for damage? Like Tracer,
Tracer Genji, maybe?
Reaper, maybe. Yeah, and it's just like I feel like I have so much more sort of like power to choose and do stuff now than I did then. And also the various like balance tweaks that have gone around have made things that I feel like were degenerate kind of go away, right? Like I remember this change going through at the time, but like there was the McCree, grenade into 5-shot, combo that just like basically one shot anybody. That's basically gone now, right? He can execute that, but he can only really execute that against tanks, and tanks can kind of suck it up, right? The supports are a little bit better and a little bit more consistent at like giving out healing. And you also have sort of more options for how, if you're playing a support or if you're playing a tank, what kinds of characters that you're choosing for that. Like, so for instance, we were having a bunch of trouble with an enemy Pharah, right? And I was on support, and I had the ability to swap to Baptiste, which was really useful because Baptiste has an assault rifle that also shoots healing grenades. And being able to swap to a support that had this hit scan weapon that did, pretty good damage, was really useful, right? And that was just something that I was not used to. So it just feels like the game is very, very different compared to what it once was. And I don't know, I'm having a good time.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I am not particularly interested in going back to Overwatch, but I get all of that, right? Like I definitely follow what you're saying, because even before we left, right, like Mercy went through several iterations, because like she was like the healer, like she was like the only healer to bring, just because like the mass res was such like a game changer.
Yep.
But yeah, yep, that sounds like a ton of fun. I'm glad you're diving back into that. You have to report back from the front lines when you put some time in the Overwatch 2 beta, because
Yeah, I mean, my hope is that Overwatch 2. I have no idea when that shit's coming out. My hope is that it comes out in some reasonable time frame, and we can sort of see some of the bigger effects of that. Like, one of the things that I thought was neat about the Overwatch 2 beta is that really all of the crowd control has been pulled off of DPS and support, and it is very focused on tanks, right? So, there's less of these situations where you kind of get locked down by an individual character who has a really powerful piece of CC. And instead it is much more about sort of like damage and your ability to like bob and weave around damage, and the master of CC is the tank. Because right now the thing is that nobody ever wants to play tank, apparently, in Overwatch 1. Like, I kept doing the flex roll thing where I was just flexing, and almost every time I got tank. Maybe 1 out of 10 times I got support, and I never got damage. Obviously everybody always wants to play damage. But in Overwatch 2, like, you can't really play McCree and have a stun, right? Or you can't play, I don't know, what's another example of this?
there's only one tank in Overwatch 2 now too.
Wait, what? Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. There's only one tank, which is also nice because the tank is bigger and more powerful, and also has a couple of changes. Well, like, one of the interesting things that they did in Overwatch 2 was they changed it so that like there are role passives. So tanks, for instance, grant less ult charge when you put damage on them, right? So this is the thing that always killed Roadhog, everybody said, right? Was he's just an ultimate sponge. If you just DPS Roadhog, yeah, sure, he can survive that damage, but they're just going to charge up their ults on your Roadhog. And I think they eventually gave him a passive that said that, like, people get a decreased thing. That's true for all of the tanks now, right? Like putting damage into Reinhardt or Winston or whoever else isn't going to increase your ultimate charge. But I think having that sort of like all of the CC be sitting on the tanks is a really interesting smart way to sort of design the game. And there are like especially having DPS, but DPS that have interrupts more than anything else, right? So if you see a McCree ulting as a Pharah, I can use my knockback grenade to interrupt that, but I can't use it to like, lock an opponent down, something kind of along those lines.
Makes sense. All right. All right. Anything else you've been doing with your week that you want to talk about?
I don't know. I've been watching Better Call Saul, and I want to fucking talk about it because.
Oh well, sorry.
The first three episodes are so good. The third episode has a speech in it that rivals chicanery, right? Which is the speech
The
that,
machine
that
gun
Charles
with the
gives.
Yeah.
Yeah, where exactly, where he talks about. Oh no. Well, chimps with machine guns is the first season, right? But in the third season, Charles goes on this whole thing while he's on this stand talking about like, oh, you think like this chicanery or whatever. The I won't spoil anything about season 3, but the speech in season 3 is so good that I was floored by it. I could not believe my ears watching this thing happen, and it was just honestly, I'm really sad that I can't experience it again, right? Like it is the kind of thing. It's so good. It's the kind of thing that good television does, right? Where it sets up this stuff years and years in advance, and then it just all pays off in this huge deluge of whatever down the line. Oh, God. Television like this. Mwah, what a picture, right?
All right. I'll try and catch up with that soon.
Just in case you were wondering, Better Call Saul still is the best television show on TV.
Best show
It
on
is so
television.
good. Yeah.
Well, that's great. I have just like not had a ton of time to put into television. I've been busy with other things. Like my parents visited this weekend, so I spent a lot of time watching baseball with my dad, which I don't particularly care about, but like it was a thing to do. We're watching a YouTube channel on woodworking, which is I don't do a lot of woodworking myself. My dad's kind of into it. The channel's called Stumpy Nubs. The dude who just like talks about woodworking tools. It's fun for what it is, but
Stumpy Nubs. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
So I have a question for you. Have you seen the Kenobi trailer?
No.
Okay, never mind then. You want to
talk about the Avatar trailer?
Oh, I do. Can I talk about the Avatar trailer? I didn't even think about this. The Avatar trailer. First of all, I loved the Avatar trailer. In the beginning of the Marvel movie, in the beginning of Doctor Strange, though I think the reason honestly I like that trailer is very stupid and dumb and kind of doesn't make like it does not inspire confidence that the movie is good, but it was a breath of fresh air in the world of trailers that I was watching, because I watched what were the trailers in front of us? It was Thor Love and Thunder,
Yeah.
Lightyear. What was the one that came before that? Maybe it was just those two. And both of those trailers had the exact same format, right? Where it was all of these like bombs and like all of the things that you expect in a trailer. The music cuts out in the middle so that they can play a joke from the middle of the movie. Snappy dialogue, quick line. Then it all rushes to a crescendo. Ba-ba! The title card plays, and then there's another quippy joke, right? Along with all of this voiceover and text about the fate of the universe and saving the world and the explanation for the plot, the dialogue or whatever. And then imagine the fucking Avatar trailer comes on, a little plinky plonk piano, just soaring vignettes over Pandora, just watching people fly around, do stuff. Very, very light, chill music. No voiceover at all. Not even a fucking word of dialogue until like the very end of the trailer, where the guy says one line. He says, "Our family is our fortress." That's it. That's all they did. And I was just like, Give him the Oscar. Like I had such a great time because where do I ever watch a fucking trailer like that? That is just about this like wonder and awe and like mood and atmosphere. I don't know. Maybe I'm just like very burned out by
The current formula.
yeah, yeah, exactly, the current formula of trailer. I mean, it's funny because I watched an old trailer. I kind of forgot how trailers were different. Do you remember a movie starring Steve Martin and Queen Latifah called Bringing Down the House?
Vaguely, does this also have like Eugene Levy in it?
Yep, yes it does. Yeah, where Eugene Levy makes a lot of weird come on or whatever. And I was like, I saw this movie. I saw this movie on Hulu and I watched maybe the first 10 minutes of it just because I was like, why do I recognize this movie? And I realized I recognized it because I watched the trailer a million times. And I went and I watched that trailer and it is so different, right? Because the trailer has the trailer guy voice, right? Where the trailer guy goes, you know, he's an uptight lawyer and she's a big boisterous black lady and she's gonna say stuff that's whatever. He's gonna go, I'm so stuck up. You can't come into a fancy restaurant and say, yo, like, you know what I mean? Like that was basically that. And I realized, I was like, my cultural footprint of this is I must have just watched the trailer on TV a zillion fucking times. I don't think I ever actually watched the movie. And I did not in fact watch the movie. I didn't really have a lot of interest in watching the movie. But just watching that trailer is so different compared to like the trailers that we get now, which very rarely have like the trailer guy voice.
Yeah, I wonder if like Cinema Sins, or I think it's the same network, like that,
Or
like
Honest Trailers.
yeah, I wonder if Honest Trailers killed that. They were like, oh
I
well,
wonder.
uh,
Yeah. I mean, the weird thing is Honest Trailers don't satirize a thing that happens anymore, right? Like
yeah,
this, the art of making trailers has moved beyond trailer guy voice, but that's the whole gimmick of Honest Trailers,
yeah,
right? That
right.
guy has that one voice.
In a world, yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, no, that's a interesting thought. But that's an interesting thing to mention too, because like, so I'm not gonna lie, my thought when watching it was, you know how a couple weeks ago when we did the Batman, it was like, it is 2008 and there's a dark and gritty Batman movie. It is 2022 and it's like it is 2008 and James Cameron is releasing an Avatar movie. It is 2022 and James Cameron is like, that was like my immediate thought. It's like, Jesus Christ, right? Like, this is, because it's been 14 fucking years since that first one, or 13 maybe. To your point though, the thing that makes sense to me is like something that I have thought while watching things is there aren't as many movies that feel epic anymore. And like, if I got some of that from Dune, and like, even though I don't think it's a particularly good movie, I got some of that from the Cloud Atlas. Um and I also got that from like fucking like Speed Racer of all fucking things. But I think that I think that that's like interesting to hear, because like that, or I agree with your, because like, I agree with your assessment, because I think that this could be like a movie in that epic style, which regardless of the movie's quality, like as I pointed out, there are movies that I didn't think were particularly good that had that feeling to it. It's something I've kind of been missing. Like, they kind of like, this is going to be grand and going to be like an experience. Whereas like the movies that kind of like fill that slot now are the Marvel movies, and they're all very jokey, right? And so they kind of undercut that feeling,
Yeah.
right?
No, I get that. It's Patrick Williams has a term for this called the gonzo movies. This is a little bit different, I guess. But I definitely do feel that, especially because, like I've watched a couple of movies recently and I was just like, man, dude, we fucking never get movies like this anymore. This happened with me with Gladiator. I went and I watched Gladiator. And first of all, Gladiator is a great movie, but it's just like you just don't get you just don't get movies like that anymore, right? Because everything has kind of been Joss Whedon-ified, I would guess, right? I mean, maybe that's not true. Maybe we do get him, but just nobody goes to fucking see him. The Last Duel is that, right? It's a historical epic directed by Ridley Scott, right? Starring big huge
Yeah,
actors.
but it didn't hit like that, right? Like, that
Yeah.
felt like a very human, like it didn't feel like an epic story, right? Like the movie is supposed to be a very personalized story of like the trauma that this woman went through, right?
Yeah.
Which is not like it's not to say anything against the
Oh,
movie.
actually, okay. I have a great movie for this. Have you ever watched? Have I ever talked about Midway? Have you ever watched Midway?
Uh, no, but that makes sense because I feel like it would apply to like, what was that? The other movie where they were flying planes in World War II? It was
Dunkirk?
yeah, that's what I was thinking of.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I watched a couple of these World War II movies, and all of them had that feeling, right? Like it was Dunkirk, it was Midway. The other one that I really loved was Greyhound, right? But Greyhound was, I mean, there's a bunch of these. Fury, which I also famously really loved. Fury was the movie about the
the
tank
tanks. Yeah,
crew.
yeah.
Yeah, at the other end of the Battle of the Bulge, and it's just like those movies definitely like give me that feeling. I just like, where are these? I don't know. So many movies are racing to put the bathos in there that it feels like you can't ever have an epic Marvel movie as long as Marvel is undercutting, you know, their movies with this jokey joke stuff.
It,
Even something like The Eternals, which is probably the closest they've ever really gotten, um, falls short for that reason.
yeah, I mean, also was not great. I mean, like I said, you can get movies that are bad that still evoke that feeling. It's
Yeah.
interesting because like I've been a big fan of Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Mhm.
And it approached some of that, but like its tone is also very much jokey on purpose, right? Like, and I think it
Yeah.
does it well, but like it doesn't hit that note just because like part of the tone it's going for is jokey. Yeah, I feel like A24 might be a place to find some of that stuff, right? I also feel like a lot of the niche for that kind of attitude has gone to horror movies, which have a different feel all their own, right? Like, because when I think about like movies that give me that feeling, like the things I start to I get pulled to is like, oh, like the movie that I feel like slots into this kind of is in the current slate is maybe Men, but like that's a horror movie and has a different feeling. Like because
Yeah.
you don't feel epic, you feel scared, right? Like that's the feeling it's supposed to.
Yeah, I think you're right though. Dune is probably the best one that I can think of in modern times. Dune definitely gave me that. And to be fair, that's a lot of what I liked about Dune, right? Was that scale and playing the whole movie just dead fucking straight. Have you seen Dune Spice Wars, by the way?
No.
The
Oh, the
strategy
game.
game, the Dune strategy game is out. And I am reasonably informed that it is fun. People like it.
Is it an RTS?
Hmm? It is actually it might not be an RTS, it might be turn-based, but I don't know. I know that you can choose there are four, houses. There's the Fremen, there's
Leto,
the
or not Leto?
yeah,
It's Atreides. It'd be Atreides.
Atreides. What's the bad
Harkonnen.
guy's name?
Harkonnen.
Harkonnen. God, what's the fourth faction? There is a fourth faction. Maybe the what are the Emperor's guys called? Like the
Oh,
Sarkelian or
Sardaukar. Either
something?
the Sardaukar or maybe like the Bene Gesserit would make sense. Um,
Oh, what factions can I play as?
because I'm like already so like I'm so far down the Dune lore rabbit hole. It's like, oh, the Benny Claylax. It's like, no, it's not gonna be them. Um,
Huh. It doesn't actually I see the four factions here, but it doesn't actually. Oh wait, I'm sorry. Play as one of several factions, including House Atreides, House Harkonnen. The Smugglers are the fourth faction. The fucking Smugglers, and compete for power over Dune.
See, this is
So
funny. Like the last, like a lot of these things to try and do like multi-faction Dune games end up inventing a fourth faction. Like the smugglers are like a force, but like they're not like enough that you'd call them the smugglers, right? Um, uh, so I think it's like an old board game that came out, like invented like a fourth faction that like was like not canon in any way, shape, or form.
okay.
That's like an interesting thing because you think that they like bring it like usually you have to go like six before you're like, oh, we can't use the Bene Gesserit anymore or anything.
Yeah. So the four characters are Leto Atreides, Vladimir Harkonnen, Esmar Tuek. Do you know who that is?
That sounds is that like the lead Fremen from the
And
how do
then
you spell it?
there's Esmar Tuek
Yeah.
Ek.
Oh, he's the yeah, okay. Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and then there is Liet Kynes?
Oh,
Light Kynes?
Liet Kynes is the Black Lady.
Okay.
With notable because it was not a Black Lady in the books. Or it was actually very specifically like like an emperor's biologist who had gone native, right? Like in like this weird kind of like I mean the whole like plot of like the original Dune novels is like Warfoil and like like this member of the emperor, which was like vaguely British-ish feeling character that had gone native, started to empathize with the Fremen. So um
Yeah.
yeah, no, that's the whole
I don't
thing.
know. Well, I will probably pick up this game. It is on my radar as something to do, and I've kind of got to this point in BattleTech, where I maybe want to I want to quit my run and start playing something differently. And so while we're in the Stellaris Overlord waiting room, I might pick up Dune Spice Wars.
Yeah, I'm getting to the point in Elden Ring where like I'm like starting to itch for to be able to watch like VaatiVidya lore videos. So I want to finish it
Okay.
out so I can start watching them. But what was that face about?
Stellaris Overlord releases this week. Overlord
Oh, okay.
releases May 12th. I did not know that they announced the release date.
Oh, hooray!
So hooray! I'm big happy about that.
Oh yeah, that's awesome.
Where the
Yeah,
fuck why would they not announce the release date? I just went to the site to see if they had put a release date up. The same thing happened to me with Total War Warhammer 3. So
that sounds like maybe like they don't think it's gonna be good. Maybe not. I don't know. Yeah, but yeah, we've gone way over at this point.
we
So
have definitely gone way over this way. Yep. So
yeah, if you'd like to email us, tell us about the thing, anything you thought of. What you thought about any things we talked about on this podcast, you can email us at derpsgames@gmail.com or podcast@derpsgames.com. Follow us on Twitch, TV, such Nerds Play Games. These go out live. You can watch these on YouTube. We are also wherever you can find podcasts. The official stream is SoundCloud, but like you distribute to all the providers. Rate and review us, all that good stuff. But if you have anything you're looking to promote?
I have nothing that I'm looking to promote. Yeah, I have nothing that I'm looking to promote.
Well, in that case, until next time, dear listeners.
Until next time, loyal listeners.